Old Sparky, sitting up on a plank platform at the southeast corner of the storeroom. Stout oak legs, broad oak arms that had absorbed the terrorized sweat of scores of men in the last few minutes of their lives. And the metal cap usually hung jauntily on the back of the chair, like some robot kid's beanie in a Buck Rogers comic strip. The cord ran from it through a gasket-circled hole in the cinder block behind the chair. Off to one side was a galvanized tin bucket. If you looked inside it, you would see a circle of sponge cut just right to fit the metal cap. Before executions, it was soaked in brine to better conduct the charge of direct current electricity that ran through the wire, through the sponge, and into the condemned man's brain. The Green Mile by Stephen King. I can officially start to cross this one off my bucket list. I am currently in chapter 6 and I couldn't wait. I'm like, I have to share some excerpts. I have to share from this book. I'm not waiting until I finish. I mean, it's a lot here. And I'll say it again, I'm in chapter 6. I'm like, I'm not waiting. I want to scream it on the top of my lungs. This is so freaking good. His use of words, like he is a true artist. These words are just dripping off the tongue like honey. He is so good with his words. So inspiring. Hello. Hello everyone, my name is Mia. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome to this new video in which I'm sharing 2 passages, 2 excerpts along my journey of reading this book by Stephen King. And I'm also very excited and elated to share. I'm actually reading a new category, a new genre. So for about the past, about 7 or 8 years, all I've been reading is like self-help, self-development, psychology, spirituality. Anytime I sit down to read or take, my precious time to open a book and dig deep and really, learn new words and soak it all in, it's a lot. We all know in this technology age, we all know actually sitting down with a book has become more of an effort. Whereas back in the day, it was pretty much your main form of entertainment. But now we're very desensitized, so to speak, and we're kind of numb to the fact that screens are a very main form of entertainment these days. So it really does take work to solidify that time for yourself, to set aside that time and be like, you know what? I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to read some new words today. So as I've been doing that along my journey, I'll say it again, the last 7 years or so, because I had my spiritual awakening in 2017. And ever since that spiritual awakening, everything changed. I was no longer interested in basically fiction, fantasy, science fiction, etc. I was only interested in the raw and the real and recovery and spirituality and psychology and mental health. That had just completely taken over my life. It still kind of is. That being said, I had a moment in my life recently. I'm like, where's the fiction? I gotta bring some fiction back into my life. I want a good story. And this, I chose the right one because I'll say it again, I'm on chapter 6 and I'm floored, like my jaw has dropped. His use of words. In fact, I want to point out a simile he uses. So for those of us who remember our English classes from either middle school or high school, there's a simile and then there's a metaphor. A simile is using words to describe something using the word like. A metaphor, you're using beautiful, eloquent, different and unique, wondrous words to describe something without the word like. So think simile, think like, think metaphor, think no like. So that being said, I spotted a simile here. It goes, usually hung jauntily on the back of the chair, like some robot kid's beanie in a Buck Rogers comic strip. So as he's describing Old Sparky, which is the electric chair, by the way, and on the first page, there is Old Sparky from 1932. Back in the day, that's how they would do it. If there was a criminal, if there was a murderer who had to go, it was not an injection. I know modern days they use injections, and it's very, I would say, not very. I wouldn't use the word very, actually. I would use the words more humane with the injections. But back in the day, this is not sounding so humane. So the way Old Sparky is described, broad oak arms that had absorbed the terrorized sweat of scores of men in the last few minutes of their lives. So even something as like minute down to the details of that, it makes me think, okay, that means these oak arms of the chair are probably smelling like these past murderers who had sat there. It probably reeks. The chair itself probably reeks. It's filled with germs and sweat, possibly blood. He's painting that picture in your head of back in the day, this is how they would do it. And back to that simile, usually hung jauntily on the back of the chair like some robot kid's beanie in a Buck Rogers comic strip. Well, once again, reading is true effort, especially when you're doing a period piece like this. This is nearly 100 years ago. So when you're using that simile to describe what the back of the chair looked like, and you're describing this kid's beanie in a Buck Rogers comic strip, of course I know what a comic strip is, but I did have to use my fancy iPad right here, and I had to Google, what is a Buck Rogers comic strip? So Buck Rogers is a science fiction adventure hero and feature comic strip created by Philip Nolan in 1929. So 1920s, 1930s, Buck Rogers here is mentioned a lot. Good old Wikipedia. But again, it's stuff like that. Like, you got to do your research. You got to look up these words. I have a sense of what the word galvanized is. I believe I read that word out loud. Off to the side was a galvanized tin bucket. If I had to guess off the top of my head what galvanized is, maybe cut in half. Galvanized. Let's look that up. Galvanized. No. See, good thing I looked it up. Galvanized. Okay, well, you can shock or excite someone into action. So they galvanized him. They shocked or excited him into action. You could use a word that way. Or galvanized as an adjective, coated with a protective layer of zinc. Galvanized steel pipes. So off to one side was a galvanized tin bucket. So two very different ways you could use the word. So yeah, lots of reading by Stephen King. I'm loving Stephen King. I am only in chapter 6. I'm definitely finishing this book. This book is, let's see how many pages long. It is nearly 400 pages long. And needless to say, I mean, kind of stating the obvious here, I am a big fan of the movie. Oh my goodness, I cry like a baby. I mean, I must have already seen that movie maybe about 10 times in my life because it did come out in the 90s, which surprisingly, I would have thought this book came out earlier, like maybe early 90s. I'm not too sure when Stephen King started his career, but I would have thought early 90s, I would have thought 80s. But surprisingly, this book came out in literally only like 2 or 3 years past, and they made it into a movie immediately. So that was really like kind of like an interesting nerdy fact I found out after I started digging into this one, because I'll say it again, love the movie. It's made me cry every single time, and I've probably already seen it like 10 times. And no, it doesn't matter if I see it 20 times, if I see it 50 times, I'm sitting there and I'm just bawling my eyes out. Because of John Coffey, I connect with that man so much, and Tom Hanks' character as well. I love John Coffey in the film. I believe the actor's name is Michael Clark Duncan, and I love Tom Hanks' character in the film. The film has such a good heart to it. It's such a good story, such a unique story, and now to read the origin story, like the real story, where that story, that script comes from, to read it here, the feeling is priceless. So I'm very, very happy. Okay, before I share this passage, I'm going to end with this passage that describes John Coffey. Before I share this passage, I am going to take a pause. Learning to take more pauses, because I know that I share a lot. I'm filled with so much passion for the arts, for movies, for books like these. I have always so much passion exuding and pouring out of me that a lot of times I get lost with my words and I go on and on, so to speak. So I want to make sure that I pause, and I practice the pause in my daily life as well, not just these YouTube videos, but I really do have to just practice pausing. Okay. His voice was a deep and quiet rumble. It made me think of a freshly tuned tractor engine. He had no real southern drawl. He said I, not ah, but there was a kind of southern construction to his speech that I noticed later, as if he was from the South, but not of it. He didn't sound illiterate, but he didn't sound educated. In his speech, as in so many other things, he was a mystery. Mostly, it was his eyes that troubled me, a kind of peaceful absence in them, as if he were floating away, far away. That right there, to describe John Coffey so eloquently, down to his eyes and down to his education level as well, dependent on the drawl and dependent on how he held himself and how he spoke. I love how in just a simple paragraph, it's just only about that long that I read, just in a simple paragraph, how Stephen King managed to describe an entire man in a single paragraph. I mean, obviously John Coffey has a lot more to him, obviously but it makes you feel as though you really know this man based on this paragraph. It made me feel like, oh, okay, based on his accent, based on where he's from, based on his education. He mentions the mystery of John Coffey as well, and that, honestly, that was my favorite part. In his speech, as in so many other things, he was a mystery. Mostly, it was his eyes that troubled me, a kind of peaceful absence in them, as if he were floating far, far away. So as if John Coffey, the healer, which the movie, the book, sorry, spoiler alert, but the movie, the book does eventually reveal John Coffey is essentially, he's a healer. So it's almost like, I love that quote, I love that phrase, to be in the world, but not of it. To have a healthy sense of separation. Like, yes, I'm in this physical body, but I am not the actual body. It's a part of me, but it doesn't define who I am. I am a soul, I am a spirit. You know, we could use several different words for who we really are on the inside. And I believe Stephen King really hit the nail on the head here when eloquently describing someone who has access to that transcendent space, who, I'll say it again, who's in the world, but not of the world. A kind of peaceful absence in his eyes, as if he were floating far, far away. And oddly enough, this is the moment in time when John Coffey is sitting there holding the dead girls at his side, which is so horrific, and how that's described. I mean, it's just so horrific. I didn't want to get into that description, those similes, those metaphors, those details. I wanted to focus on those two other passages. So I hope those two passages inspired you. May it also inspire and motivate you if you've been kind of just doing the same thing in terms of, I don't know, your art, or in terms of what you're reading, or in terms of what you're consuming on social media. May it inspire you to just switch things up. I mean, I did. I'll say it again. I've religiously only bought self-help, psychology, mental health, spirituality, those 4 genres. If they are genres, I'm making them genres, but those 4 topics, those 4 categories, those are the only categories I've bought, I've consumed within the last like 7 or 8 years. And I'll say it again, I had an aha moment. I'm like, I need to have some fantasy for my mind. I need to have a healthy escape where I get lost in a beautiful story again. I need some fiction back in my life. And enter the Green Mile. I'm in chapter 6, but I'm getting through the whole book, and I'm sure I'm already giving it a 5 out of 5 or a 10 out of 10. It's amazing. I can't wait to finish it. And yeah, perhaps there will be a Green Mile movie review soon to come. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. If you enjoy my content and what I'm sharing, I do have a Patreon account, and I am regularly uploading on Patreon a minimum of 2 times per week. It's a great outlet for me to express myself, to share my authenticity, to share my journey, my struggles, my hardships, my ups, my downs, my highs, my lows, my all. I share it all about what I've been going through, and I think it's a beautiful, healthy outlet to write and to just get things off your chest in a safe space as well. So if you want to be a part of that safe little space, safe little community where we talk about life and we talk about art and we talk about hardships and we talk about overcoming and being survivors, please subscribe to my Patreon. It's a low fee as well. It's only like $5 a month. The link is above in the description of my channel. So I have a Patreon to offer. I also have a new book out. It is called Hallowed Words of Silence. And last but not least, feel free to follow me on social media at Mia_staying_connected. So all the links are in the description of this channel. But if you want to follow along and support and show some love and support to an independent solo artist in the Midwest like myself, those are ways you could do so. Thank you.